Chapter 1. The New Death. The house still smelled of fresh tea and freshly baked pastries, a cozy atmosphere that could only be found in quiet, green gardens. But that peace was suddenly shattered this morning when Mary, the woman everyone loved, was found dead in her room. Mary was not a woman who was easily frightened by illness or accident. She was a healthy, graceful woman and the center of her family. But when the servants came in to prepare breakfast, they found her lying motionless on the bed, her eyes wide with surprise, and her hand clutching a card. The silence in the room seemed to suggest such a sudden death. Mary had shown no signs of attack or warning. Her death was a complete mystery, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary passing. What makes people more confused is that no one knows who caused this death. Everything in the house seems normal, but everyone feels a dark sign clinging to them. Mary's sister Eleanor was the first to hear of the death. She entered Mary's room with a cold expression on her face, her hands clenched so tightly that her fingers almost hurt. She was no stranger to death, but the death of her own beloved sister was a terrible shock. One of the servants, standing nearby, whispered, "She was poisoned, wasn't she?" Eleanor did not answer, just silently stared at her sister's cold face. Suddenly, a figure entered the room. Someone Eleanor never expected: Hercule Poirot, a famous detective with sharp reasoning skills. "Miss Eleanor, I am very sorry for your loss," Poirot said softly, but his voice was full of authority. "I will make an inquiry into her death at once." Eleanor turned back, looking at Poirot with disbelief. But she couldn't help the emptiness in her heart. Mary's death could simply have been an accident or a medical incident, or not. No one knew for sure. Poirot approached Mary and looked over the cards she held in her hand. "This is not a simple death, Miss Eleanor." Chapter 2. Hidden Secrets. Everyone in the house was gripped by a strange sense of unease. However, no one seemed suspicious of those around them. They seemed to be so concerned with what was happening that they didn't realize that they themselves might be being dragged into a dark vortex. Poirot goes room by room, questioning everyone who had a direct connection to Mary. These people all have their own reasons for being involved in her death, but each carries secrets that only they know. In the room of Roddy, Mary's fiancé, Poirot discovers an unsent letter. It is a letter that Mary had written to Roddy, but had torn part of it. The scribbles in the letter reveal Mary's confusion and despair. But what makes Poirot suspicious is the feeling of unease in Roddy's attitude when answering questions. Roddy, with unnatural eyes, replied to Poirot, "I don't understand why Mary acted like that. We had a good relationship. I couldn't hurt her." But Poirot knew that everyone had things to hide. Mary certainly had a big secret, and in that secret, there might be the truth about this death. Chapter 3. The Hidden Relationship. Poirot continued to investigate and discovered another important piece. Nurse Hopkins, who took care of Mary in her last days, had a very close relationship with her. It seemed that Hopkins had become the only person Mary could share all her confidences with, and that was something Poirot felt was unusual. Nurse Hopkins revealed that Mary had talked to her many times about her concerns about love, that she felt abandoned in her relationship with Roddy, and that their love might be in trouble. But strangely, she never said anything specific about why she feared a change in that relationship, and Poirot looked straight into Nurse Hopkins' eyes and asked one question. So do you know what happened the night before she died? Nurse Hopkins bowed her head slightly. I don't know anything more, Monsieur Poirot, but I feel that she may know something that I cannot help with. Chapter 4. The Ambiguous Marital Relationship. Poirot decides to meet Eleanor to find out more. Eleanor, at this point, seems unsettled. She doesn't cry much, but there is something in her eyes that suggests she has kept a secret that she can't share with anyone. Tell me, Eleanor. Mary may be your loved one, but there is some truth hidden. Isn't there? Asked Poirot, his voice gentle but firm. Eleanor hesitated, then replied, We've had a very bad relationship these past few months. Roddy has another love, and I just want it to end. So, you don't regret it? Poirot asked softly. Eleanor was silent, her eyes vacant. I don't regret wanting to save her from her suffering. But was I right? Chapter 5. Everyone knows. All eyes are on Eleanor, and Poirot knows that she is not the only one who has had a difficult relationship with Mary. But all the details lead to a simple but inevitable question. Who really killed Mary? Poirot begins to piece together the story. Everyone is a possible suspect. But was Mary's death really as simple as everyone thought? Now, said Poirot, looking at the group, it is time we face the truth. Chapter 6. The Sigh of Truth. Section 1. Untold Discoveries. After a tense confrontation, when Poirot has begun to gather important clues, he decides to invite all the characters involved in the investigation into the living room of the house. Eleanor, Roddy, Nurse Hopkins, and a few others are present. The atmosphere is tense. Each person is keeping their own secrets, but Poirot knows that the truth cannot be hidden forever. Poirot entered the room with a serious expression. Today, I will answer all questions about Mary's death. No one can hide the truth any longer. Everyone may be suspected, but only one person is the real culprit. Eleanor looked at Poirot, her eyes filled with concern. You have all the evidence. I don't understand why you're picking on me, she said, her voice a little hoarse. Poirot did not answer at once. He walked through the room, looking at each of them as if reading their minds. Mary is dead, but we must find out why she died. A life cannot end so senselessly. Section 2. The Assembled Pieces. Poirot asked each of them pointed questions. Roddy, who had never once taken his eyes off Eleanor, finally began to crack under the pressure. I love Mary, he said, his voice faltering. But I don't want her to die. Our relationship is complicated, and I admit I'm not the ideal husband. Poirot just nodded. Roddy, you are not the only suspect. Yeah, Mom. So suspect. Nurse Hopkins looked at Poirot now, her eyes suddenly shining, as if she were trying to hide something. I just want to do my job well, she said. But Poirot saw the tension in her eyes. Nurse Hopkins, said Poirot gently, you are the only person who could have been near Mary the night before she died. Do you know nothing about her death? The room fell silent. Nurse Hopkins finally couldn't take it anymore. I was just doing my job, but Mary told me so much. She was scared. Scared that she would be abandoned. Scared that Roddy's love would be gone. Poirot smiled slightly, then turned to Eleanor. And you, Eleanor, can you tell me what you know about the relationship between Mary and Roddy. Section 3. The Truth Revealed. Eleanor closed her eyes, unable to hide the exhaustion and anxiety in her heart. Mary loved Roddy so much, but I couldn't see her hurt anymore. I felt like I was no longer a part of her life. Mary's love for Roddy had grown deeper, and I felt like I had no place in her life anymore. Poirot nodded, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to come together. So, Eleanor, did you do something when you felt abandoned in this love? Did you perhaps act hastily? Suddenly, Eleanor fell silent. Guilt and grief overwhelmed her. I just wanted Mary to leave Roddy, she said, her voice shaking. I accidentally said things to her that made her think she had no place in the relationship. I never thought it would lead to her death. Poirot turned, his face a picture of the events he had been analyzing. Love, Eleanor, can be a very powerful weapon, but it can also destroy everything when we put it in the hands of the weak. Section 4. The Last Light. In the end, Poirot uncovers the truth. Mary died of poisoning, but the motive for her death is not quite what it seems. Yes, Eleanor felt pushed out of Mary's life, but she was not the one who directly harmed her. Mary's death was no accident, said Poirot, his voice echoing in the quiet room. Eleanor did not kill Mary, but she created an environment of pressure. As to who poisoned Mary, I will leave it to others to find out. All eyes turned to Roddy, who had been very nervous throughout the investigation. His story finally came to light. When confronted with the truth, Roddy accidentally poisoned Mary out of anger and frustration over his love. In desperation, he put poison in a glass of water that Mary was about to drink. This was not a deliberate act, but the result of a relationship filled with lies and disappointment. Section 5. The Price of Truth. Everyone stood in silence after Poirot finished his explanation. Mary's death, although not a deliberate crime, had opened a void in the hearts of all present. They may not have known that. In these events, they themselves had become indirect perpetrators. Roddy finally left in silence, carrying with him remorse and regret that could not be erased. Eleanor could not say another word either, just standing there, feeling her own loss. Nurse Hopkins still sat there, absent-minded, her eyes looking into the distance. Poirot turned and walked out of the room, as if he had completed his mission. But in his heart, there was still a great question left unanswered. Was Mary's death the end of all this pain, or was it just a new chapter of conflict that everyone in the room had to face? Chapter 7. The remaining one, Section 1. The Price of Silence. Even as Roddy and Eleanor faced the consequences of their actions, Nurse Hopkins remained in the shadows, unnoticed. Throughout the investigation, she remained silent, never revealing any information regarding Mary and Roddy. But deep down, Nurse Hopkins knew that the secrets she held would probably never be revealed unless someone truly wanted to find out. After Poirot left the house, and the rest of the people had gradually left with heavy hearts, Nurse Hopkins sat alone in the living room. She looked at the picture of Mary on the table, feeling the emptiness in her heart. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Alice, Mary's younger sister, who had not participated in the investigation but had been standing outside observing everything. "Alice," Nurse Hopkins said, "what are you doing here? It's all over." Alice looked at her, but said nothing. Instead, she walked into the room, closing the door behind her. "We need to talk. There's something I've never quite understood." Nurse Hopkins turned back, feeling a little surprised. "What?" "Why are you silent?" asked Alice. "You were Mary's caretaker. You must know something. Mustn't you?" Section 2. Lasting Secrets. Nurse Hopkins looked at Alice, her emotions surging, hard to hide. After a few seconds of silence, she decided to tell everything she had kept hidden all this time. "You know, I'm not just a nurse," Nurse Hopkins began, her voice hoarse. "I've worked in many places, and I've seen too many secrets. What Mary went through, her dependence on Roddy, her regret over that relationship, all of it left an indelible mark on me." Alice sat down in her chair, filled with curiosity. "Mary never told me about this." "It wasn't that she didn't want to," Nurse Hopkins continued. "She couldn't. She was trapped in a relationship she couldn't get out of. Roddy wasn't the ideal man she thought he was. He had deep issues that Mary couldn't understand. But she still loved him, even if it was just a vague affection." Alice listened, unable to believe what she was hearing. "But you said Mary loved Roddy. Do you think Roddy killed her?" Nurse Hopkins closed her eyes for a moment, then replied very quietly, "No, Roddy didn't kill her. Mary's death was an accident." "But what would you think if I told you that Mary put herself in that situation?" Alice felt her body tremble. "What are you talking about?" "Mary got herself into a situation she couldn't get out of," Nurse Hopkins said. "She accepted suffering to preserve a relationship where the man she loved couldn't bring her any happiness. And I was the one who knew that." Alice couldn't understand. "You're not making yourself very clear." "Qui so?" Nurse Hopkins pulled the diary from her pocket and handed it to Alice. "This is what Mary wrote in her last days. She didn't want anyone else to know, but she poured out all her feelings in here." Section 3. Buried Secrets. Alice took the diary. Her heart was confused when she read the first pages. Mary wrote about her love for Roddy, about the pain of living in a relationship full of lies and hurt. She couldn't share it with anyone, and finally decided to let Roddy go to free herself. Mary thought she would never be able to escape that love. Nurse Hopkins said, her eyes misty. She decided to let Roddy go, but after writing those last lines, she couldn't save herself. Alice read another paragraph, her voice trembling. "I can't stand the emptiness. Roddy will always be the one I love, but I can't live in this pain forever. I wish death would be an escape." Alice stopped, looking up at Nurse Hopkins, the understanding in her eyes slowly replaced by wordless pain. Section 4. The Price of Choice. The truth is beyond doubt. Mary destroyed her own life by accepting a lie, even though she may not have realized the severity of it. Mary's death was not an accident, but the result of a series of bad decisions and self-neglect. Nurse Hopkins, though she loved Mary, could not save her from her choice. She wanted to be free, but she was afraid to face reality. Alice held the diary in her hands, feeling everything become blurry. She couldn't express her regret when she knew that Mary had chosen death as a solution to all the pain she had suffered. "The truth may save us," said Alice quietly, "but it may also hurt us worse than anything else." Section 5. Final words finally. Alice leaves the room, leaving Nurse Hopkins sitting alone in the dark. Mary's story is revealed, but one big question remains: is the truth the antidote or just an incurable wound? Poirot, though not present in the room at the moment, must have realized that the truth is always what people fear most, but also what they need most to move forward. Chapter 8. Faint Light, Section 1. Shadows of the Past. After Alice left, Nurse Hopkins sat in the room, her hands clutching Mary's diary. A heavy silence filled the room, as if old secrets were coming back to engulf her in the past. She knew that, despite revealing everything to Alice, nothing could change Mary's tragic end. She slowly placed the diary on the table, looking at it as evidence of the downfall she could not help but feel responsible for. Mary's last words still lingered in her mind, like a curse that neither Mary nor she could shake off. Outside the window, dusk was falling. The dim light made the space seem to retreat into darkness. A sudden feeling of loneliness flooded her soul, a loneliness that no one could fill. Section 2. Missed Pieces of Life. Alice couldn't stop thinking about Nurse Hopkins's words. She returned to her room, her eyes still burning from the revelation. She sat down on the bed, still holding Mary's diary. Those words still screamed into her mind, as if to tell her that Mary's death was not a simple ending. Did I neglect her? Alice wondered, her voice fading. Did I not see that she needed me more than anyone else? Over the years, Alice and Mary had a complicated relationship. Although they loved each other, there was always an invisible distance between them. Mary, with all her pain and fear that she never showed, had to endure a life bound by love and responsibility. Alice sighed, realizing that the truth she had just learned might have come too late. Mary had been unable to save herself. But could Alice save herself, knowing that she could do nothing when her beloved sister was too weak and hurt? Section 3. Emotional Tornado. Poirot, though absent from Alice and Nurse Hopkins' conversation, understands the complexity of the characters' relationship. Although he can explain everything clearly with his intellect, he always has an inevitable sadness about human weakness. The next day, he meets with Alice again to share his final thoughts on the case. Miss Alice, Poirot begins, I understand that you are grieving, but we cannot change the past. What Mary went through is part of history. Her decisions, however wrong, are an inseparable part of her life. Alice was silent. But why do people bury the truth? Why let these pains sink into silence? Poirot looked at her, his eyes softening. The truth is never easy, Alice, but we must learn to live with it. Silence is not always complicity. Sometimes silence is the way to protect ourselves. Alice felt a little relieved to hear Poirot's words, but deep down, she knew that Mary's truth would never be forgotten. Her sister's death was a deep wound in her heart, and although time would help her heal, it would never be completely healed. Section 4. The Resurrection. The feeling of emptiness was still there in Alice's mind, but somehow she felt a small ray of light on the horizon. She knew that even though Mary was no longer by her side, she could live on, not only for herself, but for Mary. She would not let the pain her sister had endured be her final end. "Maybe we can't save everyone," Alice said, looking down at the picture of Mary on the table. "But I'll live on with a stronger soul. Not just for me, but for her." Section 5. Promises in the Wind. Poirot, after investigating all the clues and bringing the truth to light, returns to Mary's house to once again contemplate the truth behind the death. Although he cannot save Mary, he knows that finding the truth has helped people understand more about the nature of pain and guilt that not everyone can understand. Looking into the evening light, Poirot thought to himself, "Sometimes freedom comes not from running away from the truth, but from facing it." Chapter 9. Echoes of Unspoken Words. Section 1. The Subjugations of the Soul. Autumn comes, and the cold of winter is about to spread throughout the house. However, no matter how much time passes, the feeling of emptiness in Alice's heart cannot be erased. Mary's death, although clarified by Poirot, is not easily relieved. Alice stood before the mirror, staring at her own face, wondering if the truth could be the medicine to heal the wounds in her heart. The truth she had been carrying for so long was now revealed, but it also brought with it a painful silence that she could not forget. Poirot's words still echoed in her mind. "The truth is never easy, but it is something we must face in order to live." It was the truth, Alice realized, that had changed her. Every step she took would not only be to continue living, but also to protect Mary's remaining memories, even though her willpower was too weak to save herself. Section 2. The New Search. With the pain and truth in her heart, Alice decided not to give up. She continued her work as a way to heal her wounds and find new meaning in life. Where Mary was no longer there, but she still felt a strong reminder from her late sister. During a meeting with her colleagues, Alice begins to share with them the issues she has been facing all this time. Not only with Mary's death, but also with finding a reason to live after all the losses. One of her close friends, Sarah, asked her a question. "Alice, have you ever thought that you need to forgive yourself?" Alice was surprised by the question. Forgiveness, perhaps that was the key. But to forgive herself after what had happened, was she really ready? Could Mary have forgiven her, or had she missed her chance? Section 3. The Flow of Time. With renewed determination, Alice began to put her life back together. She devoted her time to community projects, helping those in need, feeling that giving back to society was the way to find meaning in her life. The truth hurt, but at the same time it opened up a new path, one without fear or lies. Alice discovers that justice doesn't always come from revenge or punishment, but sometimes it comes from the inner peace of knowing that she did her best. One day, while looking out the window, Alice realized that she was no longer looking for Mary's forgiveness. She had forgiven herself long ago, and now it was time for Alice to forgive herself. Section 4. The Return of Old Feelings. Even though she had found some peace in her heart, Alice could not stop thinking about the lost moments with Mary. She remembered the wordless conversations, the hasty hugs, and the promises that were never kept. Mary had always been there for her, but she had not been able to protect her beloved sister. One evening, As Alice was walking in the garden, she saw the door of the house open. A feeling of unease made her step in without thinking. In the lighted room, she saw Poirot sitting there, reviewing his notes, and Poirot, Alice said. Stepping closer to him, Poirot turned back, smiling gently. Miss Alice, I think I have left out some important details in the investigation. Alice sat down beside him, her eyes suspicious. Have you discovered something new? Poirot sighed, looking at her with sincerity. You did what you could. Mary's death was not caused by you or anyone in your family. It was simply a tragedy of love and loss. Alice nodded. I lived with guilt for so long. But now I understand that love and sacrifice are never sins. Section 5. The Long Road to Finding Yourself. Although life could never return to the way it was, Alice began to find peace within herself. She became involved in charity work, joined campaigns for justice, and knew that even though Mary was no longer here, her love and memory would live on in her heart. In the months since Mary's death, Alice has learned a lot about herself. Pain, loss, and truth are inevitable in life. But what's more important is how she chooses to face and overcome them. Poirot was right. Sometimes, death is not just an end, but a new beginning. And Alice realized that although life could be cruel, it still went on, and she would live up to what Mary had left behind. She would never forget. Chapter 10. The Beginning, Section 1. Human Change. Alice began to feel a strange feeling when she woke up every morning. Things were no longer the same. No longer the fear of looking at old photos or the things left by Mary. What she had gone through was a long journey, full of pain and torment, but also a journey of learning, understanding herself, and how to accept what had happened. Once she forgave herself, a sense of peace began to return. Alice knew that even though Mary was no longer around, she could still go on living, and living the way May would have wanted her to, living a life moving forward, not letting the past control her. She decided to get involved in a large community project to help people affected by life events. Alice knew that, like Mary, there were many people who were facing deep pain that they could not share with anyone. She felt that she could do something to help such people. Section 2. New Steps. One morning, while Alice was sitting in her office, a young woman came to see her. The woman, Sarah, had heard about the charity work Alice was doing, and she wanted to get involved in these projects. Alice, I hear you're doing a lot of good work, Sarah said, her eyes filled with hope. I want to join, to learn from you. Do you think you can help me find meaning in my life? Alice smiled, feeling a sense of harmony and connection with Sarah. Sure, Sarah. We can help each other. Life is never easy. But if we share and help each other, things will gradually change. Alice felt a new step forward in her life. She no longer felt empty or lost when she thought about Mary. She realized that, even though Mary was gone, the values her sister had passed on to her still lived on in her heart. Section 3. The Beginning of a New Chapter. As the months passed, Alice continued to get involved in charity work, bringing hope and help to those in need. The new friends she met helped her understand that every person has their own story, and we never know how a life can change if we are willing to lend a helping hand. Nurse Hopkins, who knew Mary well and had a close relationship with her, also began to participate in these projects. Although she always carried a deep sadness about Mary's death, she understood that forgiveness came not only from Alice, but also from herself. Together, they began to build a small community where people could share their pain and receive healing. Little by little, little by little, little by little, little by little, people began to regain their faith in life. Section 4. The Last Secrets. Even though Alice has found a new path, she still cannot completely forget Mary's death and the hidden secrets. One night, while she is cleaning up in her office, she finds an unsent letter from Mary. It is written hastily in scribbled letters. Alice, I can't do it anymore. I'm afraid I won't be able to live without Roddy. But if I have to live a life full of suffering, I won't be able to go on. I can't save myself. I hope you will forgive me. Alice read the letter over and over again, feeling the pain come flooding back once again. But this time, she didn't feel the regret like before. She felt peace in her heart, as if Mary had taught her how to accept everything. Alice smiled, leaving the letter where it was. She knew that Mary was gone, but the love and understanding she had given Alice would live forever in her heart. Section 5. Life goes on. Time passed, and Alice's life gradually returned to its peaceful rhythm. She continued her charity work, met new people, and helped those in need. Even though Mary was no longer by her side, Alice learned to continue living with the good memories she had with her sister. Mary's story, though tragic, always reminds Alice that love and sacrifice are priceless values in life. And although pain can hurt us, it is also an indispensable part of the journey to find ourselves. Chapter 11. New Horizons. Section 1. Dawn. Alice's story continues in the hopeful months. She has emerged from the darkness of the past, finding a new path, where love and understanding become the guiding principles in her life. Mary is no longer with her, but her sister's memory always lives on, not only in Alice's mind, but also in the actions and work she has done and continues to do. Her days of charity work not only helped her forget her sadness, but also helped her feel the joy of seeing lives changed. Even if just a little, the people she helped, even in difficult circumstances, gave her a reason to continue living, a reason she never thought she would find again. One morning, Alice sat by the window, watching the warm light of the rising sun, and her heart was filled with hope. Winter was over, and spring had come, bringing with it the promise of brighter days. Mary's death was no longer a shadow over her life, but part of the great journey she was on. Section 2. Companions, Alice is not alone on this path. During her journey to find peace, she meets many people with similar thoughts and hearts. Sarah, the friend who came to find her a few months ago, is now Alice's companion in charity work. Nurse Hopkins also joins the group, not only as a participant, but also as someone who helps Alice see the darkness she has not yet recognized in her life. Their group gradually grew. Women with their own stories of pain and loss came together. They created a community where no one felt left out. where they could share everything without fear of being judged. One evening, as the group sat together, Sarah said, "Alice, I feel like I've found my true home after all these years of being lost. Thank you for giving me this opportunity." Alice smiled, but inside she felt an indescribable peace. These good things were not just the result of loneliness, but the connection between hearts that had been hurt. She was no longer the lonely sister, but someone who could share the pain and from there find strength. Section 3. New Decisions. After a few months, Alice received an unexpected offer. An international mental health organization contacted her, wanting to work with her team to launch a campaign to raise awareness about mental health in the community. They wanted Alice to be a spokesperson for the campaign because of her charitable work. This offer made Alice hesitate. It was not an easy path, and she did not want to get caught up in big projects and lose sight of the values she was building in her small community. However, she realized that, without stepping out of her comfort zone, she would not be able to truly change the lives of others. Alice decided to accept, but on one condition: she wouldn't let her work hurt the community she had built. "We will continue on this path, but we will not forget our original goal," she told the group. Section 4. The Price of Sacrifice. With her involvement in the international campaign, Alice began to face greater challenges. The increasingly busy work, meetings, events, and having to communicate with major partners made her feel tired. But deep down, she knew that her sacrifices would bring a great change to others. Yet, every time she looks back at her community, Alice worries that she might lose the core values she built up before. Can her new job bring her true happiness? Or is it just a way for her to avoid past pain? Alice once thought her pain would last forever, but now she realizes that every sacrifice, every effort she makes, is a step closer to true healing. The truth about Mary's death, though painful, has given her the opportunity to heal herself and help others. Section 5. Bright Future. Ultimately, despite Alice's busy and challenging work, she has found a balance between what she has learned and the values she wants to pass on. She is not only a philanthropist, but also an inspiration to those dealing with grief and loss. Alice knew that even though Mary was no longer here, her love and sacrifice would always be the greatest source of encouragement in her journey. Mary was gone, but her love would always be an indispensable part of Alice's heart. And so, Alice not only finds herself, but also accomplishes greater things, turning suffering into strength and loss into hope. Chapter 12. The Crystallization of a Journey. Section 1. Life's Turns. Alice no longer felt the pain weighing down her heart every day. Step by step, small steps, she found the joy of living again. Charity work became a great passion in her life, and the things she helped began to change the lives of those around her. However, sometimes she still couldn't escape the feeling that Mary was still watching her, looking at the things she did with a gentle smile. One morning, Alice was standing at her office window, looking out and wondering about the journey she had taken. The past few years had been an unforgettable series of events, with tragedies, but also powerful challenges that she had overcome. Mary's death had brought her out of her own darkness and made her see a clear path ahead. But sometimes, stress and anxiety come rushing in. Alice knows that no matter how confident and strong she is, the past has a way of coming back when she least expects it. She knows that, no matter how much has changed, the past cannot be easily erased. Section 2. Old Links. One rainy evening, while Alice was resting after a long day at work, she received an unexpected call from Roddy, the man who used to be Mary's fiancé. A feeling of confusion rose within Alice, but she still picked up the phone. "Alice, I need to talk to you," Roddy said in a low, strained voice. "I can't take it anymore. There's something I've never told you." Alice couldn't understand, but she decided to listen anyway. "What's the matter?" "Roddy, I think we've said all we needed to say." Roddy hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I must admit that I did not love Mary, as I said. I could not love her, and I think it was I who caused her this tragedy. I did not have the courage to tell the truth." Alice was silent. It was a confession she never thought she would hear from Roddy. She realized that what Mary had experienced was not just simple love, but a series of broken hearts and meaningless sacrifices. Section 3. A Special Trip. After her conversation with Roddy, Alice couldn't help but think about everything. She had tried to forgive him, but could she really accept what had happened? Was it because of her indecisiveness in love that Mary had to endure a life of suffering and eventually death? Alice decided that she needed to get away for a while, to find some peace of mind. She planned a trip to the village where Mary and she had gone as children, a place that held memories of family and love. The trip not only helps Alice return to old memories, but also opens up an opportunity for her to heal her unhealed wounds. That village, with its green fields and gentle river, is like a spiritual medicine, helping Alice understand that life always continues and true love will never be left behind. Section 4. Searching for New Truth. On this journey, Alice begins to discover new truths about her life. She meets old friends who were part of her and Mary's story. They share memories and stories of the old days when the two sisters were still innocent and happy. One of Mary's old friends, John, tells Alice about a particular evening when Mary had a heart-to-heart talk about her life. "She once told me that sometimes love can be a bondage, and she never wanted to be a woman who was bound by her feelings." Alice felt dizzy after hearing this. Mary had always been afraid to face the truth about herself. She was not only a victim of love, but also someone who dragged herself into a pain she could not escape from. Section 5. Standing Firm in Life. Alice left the village with a sense of peace she had never known. She no longer felt the lingering sadness in her heart. Although the memory of Mary was always present in every step she took, Alice understood that life would never be the same again. But the lessons she learned from the people she loved would always be her compass on the next path. Returning home. Alice looked back on her life and realized that while her loved ones may be gone, those left behind will always have the opportunity to live on and make a difference in the world. Mary may not have lived the life she wanted, but Alice knew she could live a life she would be proud of. Alice no longer searches for reasons to suffer, but for reasons to love and give. She finally understands that life and death are always part of the cycle of life, and what we do with the time we have left is what will define who we are. Chapter 13. New Journey, Section 1. the endless search. Alice could not forget all that had happened. Mary's death was an event that completely changed her life. Not only the end of a tragic story, but also the beginning of a journey of self-discovery. Every step, every new thought made her feel that she could not stop, that she still had a lot of work to do. Since returning from her trip to the old village, Alice began to look for new projects, jobs that could change the lives of more people. She not only helped people in need, but also opened up new directions for herself. Directions that Mary might never have thought of, but she knew that she would definitely be proud of. One day, Alice sat down with Sarah, her trusted companion from before. "Sarah, I can't stop thinking about what we can do for this society. There are so many people who need help, and I think we can make an even bigger impact." Alice shared, her eyes shining with new passion. "We can't change everything, but every little action we take can make a difference," Sarah replied, taking Alice's hand with a confident smile. "Just do what feels right." Section 2. New opportunities. With new relationships and valuable experiences, Alice started a nonprofit organization that provides psychological support to people affected by family, love, and mental health issues. The organization's goal is to create a safe space for those who need to be heard, those who feel lost in life. Nurse Hopkins joined the organization, not only to assist in medical work, but also to help Alice build lasting relationships with the community. Together, they began creating free counseling programs for people in need who had faced and were facing deep pain like Mary. People may not see immediate change, Alice told her group, but each of us can contribute to making the world a better place. And that's why we're here. Section 3. New discovery about yourself. As each day passed, Alice felt herself healing not only mentally, but physically as well. She took time to take care of herself, exercised, and even tried new activities she never thought she would do before. She learned to paint, took meditation classes, and found the serenity she needed to face all the difficulties of her past. And things don't change overnight, Alice told herself, but every day, I'm becoming a better person. Section 4. Back to the roots. One day, while Alice was walking in the park, she met Roddy again, the man who had once twisted Mary's life. This time, instead of feeling anger or hatred, Alice only felt an emptiness. The negative emotions were gone, replaced by understanding. Roddy looked at her, then said in a slightly hesitant voice, "Alice, I can never apologize enough. I did everything wrong, and I know I can't fix anything. But I want to say one thing. I'm sorry for what happened." Alice looked into Roddy's eyes. Her eyes no longer filled with hatred, but only understanding. "I understand. Roddy, you don't need to apologize to me. The only thing I can do is learn to move on and forgive. As for you, you need to face what you've done." Roddy bowed his head, his eyes filled with regret, but a part of Alice knew that. While Roddy couldn't fix the past, he could choose to live better in the future. Section 5. Bright Future. Alice stood at her office window one beautiful morning, looking out and feeling the peace in her heart. The relationships she had built, the small but meaningful actions she took each day, had made her feel more fulfilled than ever. She realized that Mary was not just a sister, but a part of herself, Kios. The painful memories, the tears, and the love between the two sisters were the foundation for her to build a new life. A life she could be proud of. Life isn't always fair, but I'll make the most of what I have, Alice told herself, feeling the power in every decision she made. Chapter 14. Opening a New Chapter. Section 1. Unexpected Encounters. Alice has gradually returned to her new life, but it seems that her journey has not really ended. One afternoon, when Alice is participating in a charity event, she meets Roddy again. Someone she did not think she would meet again under these circumstances. Everything before seems to be in the past, but seeing Roddy again, Alice's feelings cannot be avoided. "Hello, Alice," Roddy said, his voice hesitant, but no longer confused. "I know we didn't end well, but I want to thank you for giving me the chance to really face myself." "Meshameiko." Alice looked at him, her eyes no longer filled with anger or resentment. "Just calm. I don't hate you anymore." "Roddy, the important thing is that we've learned from the past, and I hope you'll live a better life. Neither Mary nor I want to continue carrying the burdens of the past." Roddy nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I was wrong in so many ways, but I want to make it right, even if it's just a little bit." Alice smiled slightly. "Go ahead. Roddy, that's the most important thing." Section 2. Facing yourself. Despite her forgiveness, Alice knew she still had to deal with the internal conflicts that remained. She began to think about the values she wanted to pass on to future generations. She didn't want the past to cloud her ability to look to the future, but there was no denying that Mary's death had changed everything. Alice decides to meet Poirot again. Even though he has solved Mary's case, she still feels the need to share something with him. "Poirot, I can't stop thinking about what happened," said Alice, sitting across from him. "Mary's death has made me question so many things." Poirot looked at her with penetrating eyes. "Miss Alice, life is a series of choices. We may not be able to change the past, but what we do today will shape the future. Live fully with what you have, and do not let the pain of the past control you anymore." Alice sighed, a sense of clarity washing over her. "I understand. Poirot, I will." Section 3. The Journey Forward. A year later, Alice looks back on her journey and realizes that every step, whether painful or joyful, has made her a stronger person. Her charity work has expanded, and her organization now helps thousands of people. Alice has not only found peace within herself, but has also brought hope and healing to others. She also began hosting workshops and large events on mental health and emotional healing, helping others understand that while the past may be painful, they can still move forward and start over. One day, as she stood on stage talking about healing and forgiveness, Alice felt like she had come of age. We all have wounds, but it's how we face them and heal them that determines who we become in the future. Her words echoed in the air, and everyone present felt the sincerity and strength that Alice had achieved. She was no longer just Mary's sister, but a woman who made a difference for herself and for others. Section 4. Looking Back. One late afternoon, as Alice stood looking out of the window, the pale light of dusk was slowly fading. She saw the landscape around her, the hills in the distance, and felt that everything had changed. Mary was no longer with her, but Mary's love, the memories, and the lessons she had taught her lived on in Alice's heart. She smiled slightly, feeling a peace she had never had before. Life is not a series of straight steps, but sometimes it is a series of twists and turns, falls and rises from the falls. Alice wondered if Mary could see her from somewhere, and if so, would she be proud of what Alice had done? Section 5. An open ending. Finally, Alice decided to open up more to those around her. She was no longer the girl of the past, but a strong woman, ready to accept the unknown in the future. She knew that healing was not always easy, but it came from within. Alice stepped outside, letting the morning light shine on her face. Every step was a new beginning. She felt that life, no matter how challenging, would always have a way to rise. And she knew that, with everyone around her and love still there, she would never walk alone. Chapter 15. New Beginnings. Section 1. The New Road. As Alice stood before the large doors of the charity she had built, she felt a rare sense of unity within her. All the trials, pain, and loss had created an opportunity for her to step out of the darkness of her past and into a new life she never thought she would have. Even though her organization has grown by leaps and bounds, Alice has never forgotten the difficult days before. It was her traumatic experiences that helped her find her purpose in life. And now, she is a light bearer for others who have lost their way. Today, Alice's organization has just launched a new project, a mental health support program for people who have experienced major life events. She knows that, in order to change the lives of many people, they need not only material support, but also to be listened to, shared, and supported to face the pain. We don't just need to help them change their circumstances. Alice told her team in the meeting, we need to help them change the way they look at life. The room erupted in applause, and Alice felt a powerful connection within her. She knew that love and compassion would always be the most powerful tools to help those suffering find their way back to light. Section 2. Questions about forgiveness. Even as Alice's organization thrives, one question continues to haunt her. Has she truly forgiven herself? When she thought about Mary, about the decisions they had both faced, Alice still couldn't escape the feeling of guilt. There were moments when alone in her room, when she wondered if she had acted differently. Would Mary still be alive? One evening, while walking in the park, Poirot happened to meet Alice again. He was walking alone, as usual, and saw her sitting on a bench, her eyes looking far away. "Good morning, Alice," Poirot said slowly, approaching her. "It seems the years have left a deep impression on you." Alice turned, a little surprised, but then smiled. "Hello, Poirot. I'm still trying to come to terms with my injuries." Poirot sat down beside her, his eyes looking far away, as if he were thinking deeply. "You don't have to forgive everything overnight, Alice. The important thing is to learn to live with it, to accept the fact that the past will always be a part of your journey. Alice bowed her head, thinking over Poirot's words. So I shall never feel completely at peace. Peace comes from understanding that one cannot change the past, but one can choose to face it and move forward, said Poirot. Forgiveness is not forgetting, but accepting that we can do better in the future. Alice smiled slightly. A feeling of peace passed through her like a gentle breeze. Thank you, Poirot. I think I understand. Section 3. Rebuilt relationships. Alice's work became increasingly complex as her charity grew, but she felt she was doing something deeply meaningful. She began to build lasting relationships with her associates, colleagues, and the people she helped. They were not just people she helped, but people she felt connected to and shared a common purpose with. One of Alice's former co-workers, Sarah, becomes her closest friend. Sarah is also one of the people who helps Alice find a reason to live when her darkest days threaten her. Alice, Sarah said during a small group meeting, "You've done so many wonderful things, but do you remember that you need to take care of yourself too?" Alice was surprised. Me taking care of myself. Sarah looked at her with gentle eyes. You are a very giving person, but don't forget that you also need to be loved and cared for. You must make sure that you can recover and grow. Alice pondered Sarah's words and realized that in her journey to help others, she had forgotten an important part of herself, taking care of herself. Section 4. A future still open. One day, as Alice sat on the steps of her house, looking out at the green hills in the distance, she felt a peace she had never felt before. Mary might not be with her anymore, but the values Mary had taught her would always be there. She no longer feels fear of the past, nor does she live in anxiety about the future. Alice knows that. With every step, she will overcome all the pain to become a stronger person. And most importantly, she will live her own life. Even though life may continue to bring new challenges, Alice understands that every step she takes has a profound meaning, because she no longer lives just for herself, but she also lives for those she loves and for those she has yet to meet. With the stories and lessons of the past, Alice has been building a hopeful future, a future that Mary can be proud of, a future where love and forgiveness will always be the guiding lights. Chapter 16. Journey Beyond Limits. Section 1. A New Challenge. Alice stood in front of the doors of a new community center she had just started. It was a project she had been working on for a long time, a place to help people who had gone through life's storms, from mental health problems to family problems, love and loss. The center was not only a place of physical support, but also a place of spiritual healing, helping them find their self-worth. This is the beginning of a new journey, Alice told herself, her heart filled with hope and determination. She knew that, to do this, she could not do it alone. She had received great support from her team and companions over the years. As she looked around, Alice felt that every step in life, no matter how small, had a profound meaning. Every time she looked back, she saw that the journey from pain to freedom was never easy, but it was always worth it, though. Section 2. Healing from Within. Alice continues to grow her organization and projects. She regularly conducts workshops to help participants learn to deal with their emotions and recover from deep trauma. She also works with psychologists and counselors to create mental health programs, especially those aimed at young people struggling with life issues. One of the new projects Alice is pushing is the creation of support groups where people can share their stories, not just about the past, but also about what they are struggling with in the present. Each story, however painful, brings a wave of healing to the teller and the listener. We cannot live in this world alone, Alice said during a panel discussion. When we share and listen to each other, we not only find understanding, but we also find strength and unity. Section 3, Love and Future. For Alice, love was no longer just a feeling, but a constant action. Love was not just to be received, but to be given. And it was in the act of giving that she found true joy. She was no longer just someone who cared for others, but someone who truly understood that in order to love others, she must first learn to love herself. One afternoon, while Alice was organizing a celebration for her new center, she received an unexpected call from Roddy. It was the first time he had called in months, and she knew that this call was not just about work or old problems anymore. "Hello, Alice," Roddy said in a soft voice. "I wanted to say that I am very proud of what you have done. Not only have you helped people, but you have shown me that love and forgiveness are an indispensable part of life." Alice listened with a sense of peace in her heart. She no longer felt angry or remorseful as before. She just felt a sense of peace as she thought about the past, about Mary, and about how she had learned that forgiveness was not just an act, but a lifelong process. "Roddy, I learned a lot from what happened," Alice said, her voice soft but firm. "I never regretted my decision to forgive, but I also learned that in order to love fully, we must first be ourselves." And Section 4, Future Orientation. In the following days, Alice continued to expand her work. Her organization became a trusted name in mental health support, and participants in the programs began to change their outlook on life. Sarah and her team continued to develop and refine training programs with Alice to help people in distress regain their confidence in themselves. One day, while Alice was preparing a new program, she received a message from a stranger. "Alice, I have lived in darkness for many years, but thanks to your programs, I have dared to face the pains of the past and started a new life. Thank you for helping me find myself again." Alice sat there, thinking about that message, feeling that every effort she put in was not just to work or help, but also the reason she lived every day. Section 5, Bright Days One Fine Morning. As Alice stood in the garden where she used to go to think, she no longer felt anxious about the future or regretful about the past. Everything now had a deeper meaning, and Alice knew that she was on the right track. She knew that while she could not change the past or the losses, she could lead herself and others into a brighter future. And even though Mary was no longer by her side, Alice believed that her sister would always accompany her every step of the way, like a bright guiding light. Chapter 17, The Continuation of Love, Section 1, Moving On in Life. Even though everything had settled down, Alice still felt an undeniable absence. The peaceful mornings, the charity work, and the care she showed for those around her all brought her joy. But deep down, Alice knew that something was not quite over. Mary, even though she was gone, was always an indispensable part of her soul. The lessons that Mary taught her, the feelings that she left behind, were always precious treasures that Alice kept in her heart. But Alice did not want to live in the safe zone of memories forever. She knew that she had to continue to move forward and create a future. She decided to expand her influence in charity work. Sarah, her faithful companion, helps Alice carry out projects not only in her own country, but also in other countries in need. They organize international conferences, share success stories, and give advice to social workers, especially in the field of psychological support. Section 2. Healing Old Wounds. On a business trip to another country, Alice meets a woman named Emma, whose story is all too similar to Mary's. Emma is a single mother who has gone through a difficult and painful relationship with her ex-husband. She tells of her days of loneliness, wondering if she can overcome the pain. When Emma heard about Alice's story and the success she had achieved in her charity work, she couldn't believe her eyes. Alice had gone from being a grieving sister to changing the lives of so many people, and Emma realized that she could do the same. Alice, Emma said at the meeting, I thought I had lost all hope. But your story helped me believe that we can all change, no matter how much pain we've been through. Alice smiled, remembering her own difficult days. I know how it feels, Emma, but remember, every step we take is a victory, as long as you don't give up. Alice felt clearly that she was not only helping others, but she was also healing herself. Each time she helped someone, she understood more about the strength of humanity and the power of forgiveness. Section 3. Feelings about balance. Even though her charity work was a huge success, Alice did not forget to take care of herself. She learned that in order to help others, she had to first take care of her own mental and physical health. Alice began to spend more time on her personal interests, relaxing and finding joy in simple activities such as reading, painting, and attending yoga classes. One morning, as Alice sat with Sarah in a small cafe after a yoga session, she felt more at peace than ever. Sarah, I think I found a real balance in my life, Alice said, her eyes lighting up. Even though life can be challenging, I've learned to accept and love myself. And that's the most important thing. Sarah looked at her, her eyes full of sympathy. And you've helped so many others realize that. You've taught us that love isn't just about taking, it's about giving. Section 4. The prosperity of friendship. The relationships Alice has built with colleagues, new and old friends, have helped her realize that friendship is a powerful source of encouragement. She no longer has to face every difficulty alone. Alice and Sarah have become close friends, not only in work, but also in life. Together, they overcome challenges, grow together, and build the future together. Alice understands that to create a better world, mutual support is indispensable. She has been through the most difficult days, and now she is creating strong connections between people with similar ideals. Thank you, Alice, Sarah said sincerely one evening during our conversation, for all you have done. Not just for me, but for all the people you have helped. Alice looked at Sarah, her heart filled with gratitude. Thank you, Sarah, for always being by my side on this journey. We have grown together. Section 5, Love from Within. As the months passed, Alice realized that love is not just a temporary feeling, but a long journey of patience, surrender, and acceptance. She learned to love herself, forgive herself, and most importantly, love those around her with all her heart. One spring afternoon, as Alice stood looking at the blooming flowers in the garden of the center, she felt she was no longer searching for or running away from pain. She learned that true love is not something to wait for, but something we create every day, through action, through caring, and through sincere relationships. So Alice smiled as she looked at the blooming flowers, knowing that she was standing on solid ground. She had come a long way, and now she knew that even though Mary was no longer with her, her love would always live on in her. She had come full circle, and now true peace had come to her. Chapter 18, Wings of Hope. Section 1, Stories Retold. Alice continued her work, but now everything became easier. She no longer felt burdened by the burdens of the past, but instead, she felt a sense of serenity when facing the difficulties of the present. The healing stories of the people she had helped began to fill her heart, making her realize that, despite the painful times, life was still precious. One day, Alice met a woman named Ellen, who had been emotionally abused in a painful relationship. When Ellen first met Alice, she was unable to fully express what she had been through. However, over the course of their subsequent meetings, Alice realized that the void in Ellen's soul seemed to be gradually being filled, thanks to the programs Alice and her team had developed. Alice, Ellen said at one meeting, I didn't know where to start, but you gave me the confidence to move forward. I no longer feel like I'm in the dark. Alice looked at her, sensing the growth in the woman's heart. Ellen, I'm so proud of you. I know that what you've been through isn't your fault, but you can choose to live on. I'm just the one who helped you realize that strength. This was a special moment in Alice's life, when she found herself not only helping others, but also helping herself heal from old wounds. Section 2, The Never-Ending Challenges. Alice's work is not limited to organizing charity programs. She has become an inspiration to the international community about mental health. Together with her team, she organizes international conferences to raise awareness and heal mental trauma. But even though her work was thriving, Alice couldn't help but feel stressed during busy times. She began to feel a psychological fatigue that was sometimes difficult to relieve. Once again, she was faced with the question, am I really okay? Even though Alice had achieved a certain level of success, she still couldn't help but think about the future. What if she couldn't continue? And would she be able to preserve everything she had built in the future? All these questions kept lingering in her mind. Alice decided not to let her worries take over, and she began to explore herself again. She spent time sitting alone in the quiet mornings, with no work, no one around, to find the peace she once had. That was when she regained her inner strength and understood that only when she was at peace within could she continue to help people. Section 3, Special Encounter. One day, While Alice was organizing a big event about self-care and mental health, she received an unexpected call from Roddy. It was the first time he had called her since they last met. Alice felt a sense of surprise and strangeness, but she decided to take the call anyway. "Hello, Alice," Roddy said, his voice sounding different, as if he had realized something. "Hello, Roddy. What's up?" Alice asked, still unsure of why he was calling. "I want to say something. I know that what I did was wrong, and there may be nothing I can do to fix the past. But I want to tell you that I truly regret everything." Alice felt a gentleness in Roddy's voice. She no longer sounded angry. Instead, she felt the sincerity in his words. "Roddy, you don't have to live in regret. We can all learn from the past, but we can't let the past dictate the future." "I understand, Alice," Roddy said. "I just want to thank you for forgiving me and allowing me to move on without the guilt." Alice smiled softly, feeling the freedom of true forgiveness. "Roddy, peace is something we all have to find within ourselves. I'm glad you found it." Section 4. Unfinished Roads. As the summer wore on, Alice continued her relentless work. She found a new balance in her life, not only in her work, but also in her community connections. Her charity projects were thriving and had a far-reaching impact. But she also began to realize that no matter how well things seemed, there were always new paths to take. She began to think about expanding her organization to other areas, not just nationally, but internationally. Alice understood that her work was not just about the current programs, but was the continuation of a long journey to change society. "Perhaps I never really find my way," said Alice one quiet afternoon. "I only have to find the right direction to go in. And the important thing is never to stop in the middle of the way." Section 5. The Simple Things. In the end, Alice realized that life didn't have to be complicated. Love, forgiveness, and the work she was doing were the things that helped her find meaning in life. She didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to solve everything right away. As long as she continued to live sincerely and enjoy every moment, everything would gradually fall into place. With her heart full of forward-looking thoughts, Alice stepped outside, feeling the light of dawn shining on every corner of her life. Fresh, bright, and full of hope, she continued her journey, expanding her horizons and creating a world where love and sharing always existed. Chapter 19. Echoes of Life. Section 1. New Picture. As time passed, Alice no longer felt the emptiness in her heart. The charity work she devoted herself to not only changed the lives of those she helped, but also changed the way she saw herself. Living in a world where love and sharing prevailed gave her a clear purpose, more than just helping those around her, but also helping herself heal the wounds from the past. Alice often paused in quiet moments to reflect on her journey. Mary's mother, though never directly involved in Alice's projects, also noticed a marked change in her. One day, she invited Alice to her home to share with her what she had kept hidden for so long. "Alice, I see you have grown so much," she said as they sat by the fire in the small living room. "You are no longer the girl who suffered, but a strong woman who accepts and moves forward. Mary would be proud of you." Alice looked at her, feeling a strange sense of peace. I don't know what I could have done to bring Mary back, but at least I did what I could. Thank you for always supporting me." She smiled softly, her eyes full of love. "You have done more than help those around you. You have found your true reason for living, and that is the greatest gift." Section 2. The Price of Change. Although Alice's life has settled into a stable orbit, she knows that change always comes with new challenges. Work is not only about helping others, but also about facing difficult decisions. Alice cannot just look back and live in old memories. She knows that maintaining such a large organization requires constant effort. Alice begins to have questions about the future. Can she continue to expand the organization without letting anxiety and fatigue take over her mind? Can she maintain the values she has built over the years without losing herself? One evening, as Alice sat in her office looking out the window, thoughts of the future kept swirling in her head. What can I do to maintain a balance between my work and personal life? She asked herself. Just then, Sarah entered the room, sat down next to Alice, and looked at her with understanding eyes. "Alice, you don't have to do it all alone. You've built a strong organization, but don't forget that we can share this work." Alice looked up, looked at Sarah, and smiled. "Thank you. Sarah, I just get tired sometimes when I have to constantly face big decisions. But I will never forget that. No matter what the job is, friendship and mutual support are always the most important things." Section 3. Looking towards the future. Alice and Sarah continued to grow the organization and began expanding their programs internationally with the goal of helping even more people. Alice was constantly learning and improving her programs, while also developing relationships with larger organizations to create a broader impact. However, as her work has expanded, Alice has not forgotten her core values. She understands that success comes not only from building a strong organization, but from the stories of change in the hearts of each person she has helped. She doesn't want to be someone who only lives for work, but she wants to always stay connected with the people she loves and not forget to take care of herself. Section 4. The Last Days. Alice's story is not only about overcoming pain, but also about learning and discovering yourself. She taught herself that in order to help others, you must first love and understand yourself. She learned that, although life may have its difficulties and challenges, you can find light even in the deepest darkness. One day, as Alice looked out the window, the sunlight was slowly spreading across the garden. She felt that love and sacrifice were what would take her further. Mary, although no longer here, but her love and memories of her would always guide Alice, like a bright light on this journey. Alice no longer felt anxious about tomorrow. She knew that, with all her strength, love, and hope, she would keep going forward, not only for herself, but for all the people she had helped and those she would help in the future. Chapter 20. The Doors Open. Section 1. New Journeys. With all the changes and growth that Alice has gone through, her life is now more open than ever. Her charity project has gone international, with the participation of many countries, helping millions of people. The psychological support programs she initiated are starting to be recognized by large organizations and governments. Alice is not only the creator of a charity, she is also a symbol of hope and resilience for those who have faced and are facing pain in their lives. From simple tasks, such as organizing workshops, to larger projects, Alice has proven that forgiveness and love can change the lives of thousands, if not millions of people. Despite all that Alice has accomplished, she never forgets where she started. She always thinks back to Mary and the difficult times she went through. Mary is the one who gave her the strength to not give up and to continue on the path of healing for herself and others. Section 2. Stories Retold. One of the things Alice learned along the way was to acknowledge and honor other people's stories. Everyone has a story that is both painful and powerful. One of the projects Alice initiated was to collect stories from the people she helped, so they could share their journeys through hardship. At a large organization meeting, Alice stood on stage, looking at the faces of hope and pain. Each story was a different journey, but they all had one thing in common: healing and resilience. A woman stood up and began to tell her story. "I lost everything. I couldn't face the death of my husband. But thanks to the help of Alice and her organization, I was able to find myself again, to find a reason to live. I am no longer the weak woman I used to be. Now I am a strong woman." Alice felt warm inside as she heard the story. She knew that, although the work was never easy, every life changed was a great victory. She understood that. Although it was sometimes painful, the work was worth all the effort and sacrifice. Section 3. New Doors. As her charity work grew and became more widely recognized, Alice received an invitation from the United Nations to participate in an international program to support developing countries in developing mental health initiatives. This was a great opportunity for Alice to expand her influence, not only helping people in her own country, but also spreading the message of mental health to other countries. "Alice, I think you deserve this opportunity," Sarah said when Alice received the invitation. "You have done so much good in this world." Alice looked at Sarah, her heart in turmoil. This was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. But she was also worried about straying too far from her core values. She didn't want to lose herself in the process of expanding her business. "You're right, Sarah," Alice replied, her voice thoughtful. "This is a wonderful opportunity, but I need to make sure I don't lose sight of what's most important. No matter how big the job gets, I must maintain the sincerity and love I've learned." Sarah smiled, looking at Alice with trust in her eyes. "You can do it. You always know how to hold on to your values." Section 4. The final section of the journey. Finally, after months of challenges, Alice decided to accept the international program. She realized that, despite the challenges, this job would allow her to continue spreading love and forgiveness to those who needed it most. And in doing so, she not only changed the lives of those around her, but also opened new doors for those who needed help. Alice stood alone on the rooftop of the organization building, looking out at the vast city before her. The sunset light shone everywhere, and she felt like she was standing on the threshold of a new life, a life filled with hope, love, and forgiveness. Even though there are still difficulties ahead, Alice knows that every step she takes will be a step towards changing the world, and most importantly, she has found peace in her heart because she knows that love and forgiveness are what will always get her through every challenge. Chapter 21. The Long Road, Section 1. A Step on a New Road. Alice has been through many challenges in her life, but now she feels an inner peace that she has never felt before. Her journey is not only a story of love and forgiveness, but also of perseverance, belief in yourself, and the ability to change the world around you. Now, with the new opportunities that international work has opened up, Alice is starting to explore new frontiers. She finds that it's not just the charity work that matters, but the connections she makes with people all over the world. The change Alice has helped bring about is not something that comes easily, but it can truly change someone's life with just a small action, a gentle word, or a sincere word of encouragement. During a business trip to an Asian country, Alice met a group of women who had suffered years of abuse and faced serious psychological problems. After a few days of working with them, Alice realized that she was not only helping them explore their pain, but also helping them find light in the darkness. Kikoras, Alice. Thank you, said a woman in the group, tears streaming down her cheeks. You have helped me see life differently, and I will no longer let the trauma of my past define me. Alice smiled, her heart filled with happiness. You guys have done it all. I just helped you see the power within yourself. We can all change. Section 2. Realizing Unfulfilled Dreams. Even though Alice had done so many good things, she still felt an unfulfilled dream within her. Her organization had reached so many places, but she knew that there were still so many places that had not been reached, so many people that had not been helped. In a conversation with Sarah, she shared about this. Sarah, I feel like I haven't done enough. There are so many people who need help. Our work can't end just because we succeed in a few programs. Sarah looked at her with deep understanding. Alice, you have changed so many lives. But yes, there are still many people who need us. We will continue, because there is much more to do. Alice felt that, despite her great achievements in work, she still had a desire to contribute more. She did not want to help others in a narrow scope, but she wanted to make a wider mark. New initiatives in psychological support and community development were being implemented, but Alice knew that this work would be a long race. Section 3. Dealing with Fatigue. Despite her success, Alice can't help but feel mentally exhausted during busy times. Waking up in the mornings with a pile of work waiting for her sometimes makes her feel like she's overexerting herself. One day, after finishing an international conference, Alice sat down and sighed. Can I do this forever? She asked herself. And Poirot, the friend she met during the painful years of her past, called her. Alice, I know there are times when you feel tired, but I want you to remember that you don't have to do it all alone. Change doesn't come from one person. It comes from the community. We need to build a solid foundation for the generations to come. Alice listened silently to Poirot's advice, feeling like she had found the necessary balance. She knew that she could not carry on alone forever, and that she needed to share the work with those around her to create a greater change together. Section 4. Upcoming projects and new opportunities. Feeling better after her conversation with Poirot, Alice decided to expand the international projects she was working on. She began to develop long-term plans, collaborating with other organizations to build a global support network for people with mental health difficulties. We can't change Everything in a day, Alice said at a key meeting, but with collaboration and letting go of pride, we can create a strong community where people can recover and start over. Once again, Alice felt that, although she had achieved so much, the work was not yet done. She had been opening up new opportunities for those who had not had the chance to change their lives. And although there would be challenges, Alice knew that perseverance and faith would take her even further. Section 5. New Life and Peace Found Again. Alice doesn't live just for work. She has learned that inner peace is the most important thing. No matter how busy she is, she still takes time for herself to take care of her body, nourish her soul, and continue to learn new things. In the evenings, when her work was done, Alice often went out for a walk in the park near her house, looking at the stars in the sky and feeling peace in her heart. She realized that love and forgiveness are not only about helping others, but also about forgiving yourself. She smiled as she watched the autumn leaves fall. Every step I take, every change I make, leads to a better future, Alice said to herself. And that's what makes life worth living.